Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you. I'm from the federal government here to help you. Yeah, you're supposed to laugh. If you're not laughing, leave. Kelly did a great job of explaining the nature of the problem. She's been a breath of fresh air. You know, 2010 election, I don't remember. Do you remember any commercials about foreign policy? If you were watching the 2010 election cycle and all the ads being run by House members and Senate members, there was almost no discussion of foreign policy. What should we do about Iran? You know, how big is big? How big is too big? And she and Marco Rubio and a few others have really hit the ground running about foreign policy. Now, let's talk about defense policy. How many people remember Ronald Reagan? Fondly. Okay. I cannot believe that the party of Ronald Reagan would have agreed to such a dumb idea as this. Now, you talk about being adrift. You know, the Debt Control Act, I voted against because it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. But at the end of the day, here's what we've been able to accomplish. Politicians were giving a task of cutting $1.2 trillion over a decade out of I don't know how many trillion to pick from over the next decade. We failed. I'll blame me as much as anybody. I'm not picking on the members of the super committee. But the solution that we came up with to deal with our failure is to fire the soldiers. Keep the soldiers, fire us. This is just ass backwards. So my point is that we need not only to correct the problem, but these two conservative organizations hosting this, we need to have a discussion among ourselves. Where the hell is the Republican Party going? How did we do this to begin with? This is more than replacing sequestration. This is resetting who we are as a party. I want tax code reform. I want a flat tax. I want an entrepreneurial tax code. I want to get $16 trillion out of debt. I want to reform entitlements, adjust the age for retirement, means test benefits. Count me in. But the party I joined up to a long time ago considered the #1 obligation of the federal government is to defend America. And in this deal, to try to bring about some fiscal sanity, we had as the penalty clause what I believe to be the most irresponsible approach to defense in modern times. And our Republican fingerprints are on that. So that's #1. We need to not only fix sequestration as Republicans and Democrats, but the Republican Party needs to get back to its roots about who we are and what guides our thinking. That's the most chilling thing about sequestration. Not just that we'd be dumb enough to put the Defense Department at such risk at a time we need it the most, but that we would even buy into this concept. So, President Obama, yesterday, I think it was, maybe 2 days ago, you made a speech to the VFW talking about sequestration, talking about Republicans not coming to the table and wanting to solve the problem by putting revenue on the table. I'm here to say, you're the commander-in-chief, not me. You should be leading this charge, not me. I will be a willing partner to any Democrat, including the president, to fix this. And yes, I'm willing to put revenues on the table, but we're not going to increase tax rates. This means a lot to me to get it right. And I'm willing to work with my Democratic colleagues to get it right, but there is no substitute for presidential leadership. How could a commander-in-chief sit on the sidelines knowing what's coming their way and not really take this more seriously than President Obama's taking it? How could a commander-in-chief listen to the Secretary of Defense describe what was going to happen to the finest military in the history of the world and basically be indifferent about it? So President Obama, call us down to the White House. Republicans and Democrats, get us in a room and say, we're not leaving till we fix this. That's what we need more than anything else is presidential leadership. Mitch McConnell said today at some interview yesterday that he believes we can avoid the effects of sequestration and that he's willing to look at a revenue component to solve the problem. Between now and the election in November, here's what I propose we do. That we sit down together and find a way to avoid sequestration for 2013. There's not going to be a big deal between now and the election. But there is an opportunity, in my opinion, working together with Democrats and Republicans, to find a way to offset $109 billion without destroying or putting in place the destruction of the finest military the world has ever known. And what did Panetta tell us? You can't plan for the effects of sequestration. Count me in as far as reforming the Pentagon. I'm willing to give $450 billion. That's the first part of this agreement. I'm willing to say that we can take $450 billion out, maybe a little bit more over the next decade, because the Defense Department, when you're $16 trillion in debt, they have to be included too. But what I'm not willing to do is to set in motion the destruction of our military capability at a time we need it the most. I'm not willing to sacrifice modernization. That means we could not engage Iran in the future. The ability of this country to take the Iranian nuclear program down is very robust. If sequestration became the law of the land 10 years from now, it would be lost. That's what's at stake. And if we went into Iran, we would have the best technology on the planet. We'd have stealth capability. We'd have shooting at them before they can even see us. We've got a lot of technology out there that's going to save a lot of lives. And if sequestration goes into effect, the first thing to go is going to be modernizing our weapons, maintaining the ones we've got, and you're going to have draconian rifts in the ranks. So if you believe, as I do, as I think most people here do, that every politician's expressed this is unacceptable, stop talking about it and fix it. So here's what I propose, that we find $109 billion out of the federal budget, $3 trillion plus, in 2013 dollars to avoid the effects of sequestration in the first year, to give the new Congress a chance to fix this long term. When I say revenue, what do I mean? I mean looking into the tax code and finding some deductions and exemptions that exist for the few at the expense of the many, taking those deductions away, applying some of that money to offset 2013 sequestration. I mean taking government property that should have been sold a long time ago and selling it, getting the money and applying it to the effects of sequestration. I mean looking at the fee base out there, some of which has been locked in stone for decades, and increasing fees in certain areas of the government to generate money to help avoid the destruction of the Pentagon and other non-defense services. I'm willing to do that using the Bowles-Simpson formula of 3 to 1. That means the bulk of the $109 billion comes from cutting the government in other areas. And if we can't find $70 or $80 billion out of a $3 trillion budget, we're not looking very hard. So that's my challenge to the organizations in this room who care about foreign policy and national defense. Challenge conservatives in Congress to, one, never do this again. No matter what kind of debt situation we have in this country, the solution is not destroying the military. The solution is going where the real money is at. The real money is in entitlements. And I want to reform the tax code and make it more entrepreneurial. Count me in for the Bowles-Simpson concept. But here's another challenge. The mandatory spending part of the defense budget is out of control. Do we have any retired military here? Dave? Well, if I don't get court-martialed in 2 years, I'm going to be retired. We haven't had a premium adjustment in TRICARE since 1995. In the next 20 years, TRICARE and other mandatory health care programs are going to be about 20% of the Department of Defense budget. We need to fix that now. Every military commander has told us without any hesitation that the mandatory part of DOD's budget is putting pressure on personnel and modernization. So at the end of the day, not only do I want to fix sequestration in a logical, sound way, I want to take the Pentagon's budget and make it more sustainable. I do expect some premiums to be adjusted in TRICARE in a way the force can accept. I want to keep faith with the retired community, but I don't want to pit the retired community's health care needs against the modern day needs of those fighting this war. That means we all got to give a little bit. So thanks for having me. And to the conservatives out there who believe we need to fix this, we also need to do more than that. We need to think long and hard How did our party let this happen? How did we lose our way? I believe in peace through strength. The primary obligation of the federal government is to defend this nation. In closing, it will be uncomfortable for some of us in the political arena to defy certain strict ideological principles. We will make people mad at us. But here's my response. The hard thing is to go to Afghanistan and Iraq multiple times, risk getting killed or wounded. There's nothing in my job as a senator I consider to be nearly as hard as those who are taking on the fight to defend us against vicious enemies who would kill us all. So to my colleagues who say that the Congress is war-weary, that we're tired of dealing with all this money issues and we got to put defense on the table because we're war-weary, I would imagine those who've been fighting this war would find it odd that the reason you're going to freeze defense spending or have to cut the defense budget beyond what it can bear is because you're weary. The people who are weary are the ones who've been fighting this war. At least we can give them the technology and the tools they need to fight the war and win. This is a defining moment in the 21st century for the United States. This is a defining moment in the history of the Republican Party. I intend to meet this challenge. Thank you.